What's going on, everybody? Jolt here from the Token Minorities, and we are back with Week 4 of Season 7 of the NPL, this week against my good friend and channel mate Aberforth and his newly rebranded Newcastle Umbreon. He was the previous coach of the Brisbane Broilers, if you happen to remember some of those games against him in the past. So, last week we kind of got pummeled by Togavor and the Portland Timbers. We had a very poor matchup. We did our best, but we just got destroyed last week, quite honestly. I believe it was a 3-0 loss. Not too great. Really need to bounce back here this week, as this 1-2 record doesn't sit very pretty, especially when I'm trying to make playoffs here at the end of the season. So it's only a 10-week season. We need to bounce back immediately and get ourselves back up to 500 with a 2-2 record, and we've got to beat a very solid player here in the format in Aberforth to be able to do that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump on into this. Make sure to check out his channel. It will be linked in the description below, along with all the other links to the NPL related channels, as well as the majors, minors, coaches, and analysts YouTube channels as well. So I think that's all the early information to get out there. Let's jump into this matchup a little bit. As my opponent, Abe, has Tapu Koko, Salamence, which is Z eligible, Mega Scizor, Nidoking, Celebi, Sneasel, Darmanitan, Gastrodon, Gigalith, Hoopa Confined, and Lanoon. So his team is very offensive, which really does fit his playstyle. My opponent, Aberforth's playstyle, is very much so offensive, but more so to the extent of he likes to use setup moves and setup sweepers in his games. He usually is going to have at least 3 setup sweepers, usually more than that, and with the way he's been using his team throughout this season, he likes to use maybe 1, 2, maybe 2 or 3, honestly, momentum options on his team, usually being things like the Tapu Koko, Mega Scizor, and the Darmanitan. Maybe the Celebi that he just recently acquired could also be under that category. He likes to bring at least 2 or 3 of those as well. Sometimes they also have some sort of setup option on them, but then the other mons on his team are almost always setup oriented, so I do need to prep around that very carefully, as every single setup threat on his team is a threat to my team as well. Most notably, I think things like the Salamence and potentially a Calm Mind Tapu Koko, potentially a Calm Mind or Nasty Plot Celebi, even Belladrum Darmanitan is honestly a possibility, and Lanoon is actually a massive threat to my team. I have some resists. I have things like a Kofag, Jirachi, Terrakion that all can deal with it pretty well, even when it gets up to its +6 from a Belladrum. But with the buff, Lanoon got this gen, being able to basically get back to full health when consuming its berry at 50% due to Gluttony. It is just an enormous threat to my team. It's able to run coverage to hit everything. It can simply run things like E-Speed and Shadow Claw to deal with Jirachi and Kofagrigus, and then maybe even Seed Bomb in the last slot if it wants to have something to deal with the Swampert, as E-Speed at +6 does not quite OHKO FizzDef Swampert, so I could see that being an option. But yeah, his cheapest mon on his team is arguably his biggest threat against my team. I wouldn't say the biggest, but it's one of his bigger threats against me. I think that the Hoopa C, another one of his lower selections in his draft, is actually kind of annoying against me too, as I really don't switch into the combination of Ghost and Psychic very well at all. That said, the best Hoopa set against me is almost certainly either going to be Choice Scarfed or like a Focus Sash variant, as it's pretty much only going to get 1 kill against me, I think, unless it is one of those options, and even if it is, it might only get 1 kill, just based upon how I prep around it. But I'll talk more about that whenever we get there, as I do think I have some pretty good ideas on how to deal with that, as Hoopa is very weak to Pursuit. But the fact of the matter is, he loves to have momentum, he loves to bring setup sweepers, and there are some pretty easy ways, I guess, to deal with that kind of play style, and it's something that my team is actually very strong at doing, and that is simply denying opportunities to set up. And you can do that with a fun little move called Taunt, and as you'll see when I'm building here, and as you can already tell from the title of this video, I'm sure, I'm going to bring a lot of Taunt in this game, as Taunt is so good against him, so good. It denies so many options. It denies Salamence from getting a Dragon Dance, it denies Mega Scizor from defogging, it denies all of his Stealth Rockers from getting up rocks against me. It just denies so many things that he would want to do with this team. It's very anti-Abe, and that's something I'm going for with my team build here. Taunt is super anti-Abe, and it will be exploited here in my building. Now, one other thing to note before I jump into some of my better mods against him. He is very weak to Stealth Rock. He only has one remover, being the Mega Scizor, and if he wants to bring removal on Mega Scizor, go for it, but that triple taunt core that I'm going to be going with here with my team build obviously prevents that pretty well, and it prevents Mega Scizor from recovering as well, which can keep it low, keep it in range of some of my offensive threats, and in general he'll just continuously get worn down by rocks, as things like the Darm, the Salamence, even the Tapu Koko don't appreciate rocks. Sneasel obviously doesn't appreciate rocks, so that combination I think could be really potent against him. Specifically, some of the bigger threats on my team to his. Terrakion is a huge threat against this team, huge, especially if I'm able to get up to +2. I don't know if that's going to be a possibility, but he does not switch into the combination of fighting and rock coverage very well at all, so that certainly is pretty nice. I think that the Mega Houndoom and the Serperior collectively have a strong matchup against him, as if you look across his roster, nothing's able to beat both of them, and that's pretty clutch. I think he could bring something like the Celebi to help him deal with the Serperior, but that obviously is pretty much hard countered by Houndoom. He could bring something like the Gastrodon or the Gigalith to help him deal with the Houndoom, but that's pretty much fodder for Serperior. So that combination, very, very good against him as well. So I do have some very strong offensive options, I feel. The tricky part is trying to survive his momentum, his onslaught of momentum. Last week really proved that my team can be kind of weak to momentum. Can be. But I do think Rotom kind of contributed to that. The Rotom cut that kind of body bagged me last week. Yeah, fortunately we don't have to deal with that again here. So that's pretty nice. But I do think we have a pretty solid strategy as to how to approach this game. Now let's go ahead and hop on over to the team builder real quick, and we're going to kick this off with the Terrakion. Now this set is very specifically designed, very important in this matchup, because I'm a little weak to T-Spikes, especially when I don't really think Zangoose is a viable bring. It's not the best bring in this matchup, admittedly. He has several switch-ins that could give it a hard time. He has several ways to abuse it coming in just by having something like Intimidate. Dragon Dance Salamence could just come in on a Zangoose after getting a kill and could set up for free, and that'd be pretty bad. He also has things like the Mega Scizor that can come in on my Stab. He also has like a Hoopa, for example, that could come in and give me a hard time. So I really can't bring Zangoose, meaning that I'm kind of weak to T-Spikes just by nature. That said, I need to have a way to deny T-Spikes as well as to deny hazards on turn 1, as if I can deny hazards turn 1, if I can deny hazards throughout the game, then this team will abuse him. That's very, very key. I need to be able to deny the hazards for this team to be able to do its job, and that is Terrakion's job. Now, I am an Air Balloon set. I don't really like Air Balloon. Last time I ran Air Balloon, the Air Balloon scandal versus Chris Togavor happened, and I lost the game because of him not seeing it. Fortunately, this is on Showdown, so I don't have to worry about that here this time around. But Air Balloon is pretty essential here as a lead, because I think there is a decent potential that he could bring a Nidoking as his lead to try to bluff T-Spike, to try to bluff something like Stealth Rock or whatever on turn 1, and he could easily be Choice Scarf. The Air Balloon prevents a Scarf Nidoking from dealing with Terrakion on turn 1 unless he brings like Focus Blast or Superpower, which I think is pretty unlikely whenever Earth Power plus Sludge Wave plus Ice Beam pretty much covers everything on my entire team, quite honestly, so I really don't think he would need to have Superpower. I think he would use just something else in that slot. So yeah, Air Balloon's pretty nice on that, but just in general, this set does allow me to immediately taunt a lead Nidoking, to taunt whatever his lead is, honestly, if it's a potential rocker, and prevent those Stealth Rocks and get up my own on the following turn, as I do have a fair amount of bulk on this. The 136 HP investment does allow me to survive literally any hit from a Tapu Koko on turn 1, as long as it is not Choice Specs or Choice Band. I do not expect to ban a Tapu Koko. My team has enough defensive synergy to really force him to want to switch up his moves, so I don't think he's going to lock himself into just a single move whenever it comes in. So this should be sufficient as a lead to be able to deal with Tapu Koko as well and get up my early rocks versus that, which could be pretty clutch. So I do have enough speed investment on this to outpace base 100, so this allows me to outpace, of course, a max speed Salamence. Don't think he'll really bring max speed. I think he'd be more like an adamant bulkier set, as, you know, what's Jirachi theoretically going to do to a Salamence anyways, but you never really know. And then I was able to throw the rest into attack here. So I do have the Taunt and Stealth Rock, and Edge Quake hits his entire team at least neutrally, as that coverage usually does. So that is pretty good against him overall. Not amazing, as I don't have close combat for Lanoon. I don't have close combat for like the Gigalith, for example, but with the Air Balloon attack, Gigalith can only touch me if it has Superpower, which again I don't think is super likely on Gigalith either. but even so, I do have the Earthquake, which is super effective, and Stone Edge just hits so much of this team really hard that it was really a stab that I couldn't pass up, especially when he has a Salamence that I really would like to get rid of if I have the opportunity to do so. So that's a pretty important mon, and the first of my Taunt core. Now next up on the Taunt core is the Superior. So this set is pretty cool. It's a Koba Berry, so it's somewhat of a, I don't really want to call it a lure for Tapu Koko, but more of a check, just so I have an additional way to deal with it. My whole team is going to be invested in such a way that I'm going to be able to take any hit from Tapu Koko basically from full health. That's the general idea with this whole team. Tapu Koko is probably the biggest offensive threat against me that's not like a setup threat, just because it has really good coverage against everything. So if my whole team can at least take a hit from it, then as long as I keep something at full health for the whole game, then I'll be able to deal with it basically. So that's the general idea with all of my bulkier spreads that you'll see here throughout this team. So that's the reasoning behind the defense, of course, but I do have enough speed, again, for the Salamence base 100s. I can taunt that, preventing it from setting up, but just in general, really solid against him offensively. I already talked about this earlier, so not going to detail on the coverage too much, but this coverage combination of Leaf Storm, Hidden Power Fire, and Dragon Pulse does work, does deal with pretty much everything, which is pretty nice. Now, next up is the Mega Houndoom. Again, a Taunter, very solid against him. I do have a little bit of Spadef investment taken away from my special attack investment just to make sure I can survive a Magnet Thunderbolt from the Tapu Koko from full health. I think that could come into play here, so just in case push comes to shove, I do have that option. Again, I have Taunt, I have Dual Stab, because Dual Stab beats his entire team with the exception of the Gastrodon and the Gigalith. However, I do have very solid responses, I think, to both of those Pokemon, so I didn't really feel the necessity to bring grass coverage on this to deal with them, and even if I did, it probably wouldn't even 2-hit KO Gastrodon, and definitely wouldn't 2-hit KO the Gigalith, so not really worth it, you know? So I do have Sucker Punch in that slot instead, just to ensure that I can whittle things like Immense that happens to get a Dragon Dance off into range of my next Pokemon that I will show here in a second. So the next Pokemon actually being a Scarf Crobat. So I do need to get things into range of Scarf Crobat, especially when they become faster than the rest of my team. So this really the team itself really denies those opportunities to gain speed control over my team, but just in case he finds a way to work around that, maybe I'm forced to preserve something instead of keeping something whittled, then the Sucker Punch on Houndoom will hopefully put it in range of my Scarf Crobat. Now this is a very, very important set in this game. It's basically my safety valve for my get out of jail free card basically for this game, as it outspeeds anything. Plain and simple. This outspeeds literally anything with the Adamant nature. Anything at +1 is outsped by this Crobat unless he brings either a Scarf Sneasel or a Scarf Tapu Koko, neither of which I expect in this matchup. If he brings a Sneasel, I 100% expect it to be Life Orb, maybe a weird Sash or a Violite set is possible, but it will not be Scarfed. I'm very convinced it will not be Scarfed. So this will be able to outspeed that. Scarf Tapu Koko is just not smart against me. Straight up, I don't think it's smart, so he's not going to bring that either. So this will be able to outspeed anything at +1, which could bail me out of just wild situations. Abe has been known to bring some kind of wild setup sets, like Salic Berry, for example, is a possibility. He could just bring random Scarfers, like Scarf Nidoking is something else I was already thinking about that I already mentioned before. This would allow me to outpace that as well. Scarf Nidoking is a set that I think has a lot of merit against me whenever my three primary offensive, or my three, shouldn't say my three primary offensive mons, but three of my most common mons that I will bring to a random match are all weak to ground, being the Jirachi, Terrakion, and Houndoom, so this will allow me to deal with Scarf Nidoking as well. I do have Brave Bird for pretty obvious reasons. Stab does a lot of damage to his team. U-Turn for momentum. Cross Poison for the Tapu Koko does 1,000,000 to Tapu Koko. Doesn't quite Oko, but because of my Adamant nature, I only need like 2 rounds of Stealth Rock to be able to do that, or just 1 round of Rocky Helmet, I think, would be enough to make that happen. So that's pretty cool. I do have Pursuit on this as well, just to make sure that Hoopa does not have a fun time against my team. So that is the Crobat. This is really my offensive core for this game. The triple taunt core and the Crobat should be able to deal with them pretty well offensively. Next up is a little bit of a lure and pivot. I think I'll call it more of a pivot, but it's also somewhat of a lure. So this is a Kasib Berry Jirachi, max HP with enough investment to outpace a max speed Darmanitan. Now, I believe he might also have another base 95. I can't remember off the top of my head. But regardless, this allows me to, first of all, check a +6 Lanoon with no issues whatsoever, as the Cassib Berry allows me to survive a +6 Shadow Claw, even if Adamant, very easily, quite honestly. Even with a critical hit, I believe I survive with no problem. So that's pretty nice for sure. The combination of Psychic, Energy Ball, Hidden Power, Fire, and Icy Wind keeps his whole team low and keeps his whole team slow and low, and that's going to be able to pretty much just keep me in command of this game. I can click Icy Wind versus Mince, I can click HP Fire against Scizor, Psychic against a lot of things on his team, and Energy Ball for the Gastrodon. Just that combination of coverage will help keep things in range of the offensive members of my team. So this is pretty much something that'll set the stage for the rest of my team and just prevent him from getting any sort of advantage on any member of my team, as I have Taunt on 3 of them. I'm Choice Locked into a Scarf on the fastest mon on my team, and then I have this to really prevent him from doing anything else, honestly, in my face. So yeah, this Jirachi is super solid overall and can take hits from a lot of stuff on his team, even with just max HP and 44 EVs in Spadef. So finally, we have the Swampert. I felt like I needed to bring this Swampert just because he does have the Tapu Koko. I know it gets Grass Knot, but I can't have him just Volt Switch for free against my team. I need to bring the Ground type, and this is certainly very solid, as this allows me to deal with a Life Orb or Banded Darmanitan with really no issues. I can't be 2-hit KO'd, which is pretty nice, and as long as I have the Stealth Rocks on the field, then Darm is only going to be able to come in a couple times here due to my Rocky Helmet, plus the Stealth Rock damage, plus the recoil from Flare Blitz. So this really shuts down Darm, as well as being able to shut down the likes of a Dragon Dance Salamence. Again, trying to set up in my face. I have Ice Beam, I have Roar, you are not doing anything in my face. Earthquake, just for general coverage against this team, and Superpower is pretty much exclusively there to help make sure Lanoon can't set up on this either in a last mon scenario, as normally Roar would be enough to prevent that, but I do kind of have a hunch that he might try to keep Lanoon around and set up on Swampert late game, maybe as a last-ditch effort win con, just in case my Jirachi happens to be weakened. This gives me that second safety option versus the Lanoon. So really, Lanoon can't set up on anything on my team, which is really nice. Quite honestly, that's really, really nice. That helps whenever Abe just has this huge affection for Lanoon. You know, that's, I don't know, like, it's a really good mon. I'm not going to deny that, but man, he loves that thing a little too much in my opinion. But that's pretty much the team here. Overall, very solid. I think it's pretty much taken on that hyper defense approach again, which was something that I tried in the PPL against Travis, Ruby, and quite honestly, I played that game like just awfully. So here's maybe a little bit of a chance for redemption with this strategy. So again, going to tailor this as the hyper defense build to beat Abe's very offensive, very setup heavy style, and you know, we can hope for the best on that. So that's all I have to say on the team. Let's go ahead and hop on over to the battle, and we can see what went down here, as my opponent Abe decided to bring the Darmanitan, Tapu Koko, Celebi, Mega Scizor, Salamence, and the Nidoking. So no real surprises here. I thought there was a decent chance he wouldn't bring Darm, maybe in replacement for something like the Sneasel, maybe even for the Hoopa, as both of those had pretty decent matchups against my team on paper as well. But this is what he decided to bring, which is pretty okay with me, because right now he only has 2 potential Stealth Rockers, being the Nidoking or the Celebi. In either case, I can taunt either of them and guaranteed survive any one hit with my Terrakion. So the Terrakion lead is looking really nice here, definitely. And there's of course also the solid option that he'd bring the Tapu Koko, but like I already talked about, I'd be able to survive any one hit from that as long as it is not Choice Specs or Choice Band. So that works out pretty well. Overall, late game, it looks like the Crobat could certainly win the game as long as I have the Mega Scizor weakened a little bit, as well as the Tapu Koko. Shouldn't be too hard if I'm able to get the rocks on the field early, but combination Mega Houndoom and Serperior looking really solid again. And the Jirachi is also just looking solid. So the whole team is really solid against what he brought, which is nice. I'm really happy to not see the Sneasel, honestly, as that would probably force me to either lose my Rocky Helmet on the Swampert or just take a bunch of damage with something that I didn't really want to take a bunch of damage with. So let's go ahead and hop on into this and see if we can pull off this win. We lost against Abe last time around. Let's see if we can do it this time. So I am going to lead off with the Terrakion, as he leads off with the Darmanitan. So that's pretty perfect for me. I don't expect a superpower, and even if he goes for it, I have enough to be able to survive that anyway, so that's pretty cool for sure. As here, it's pretty free Stealth Rocks for me as he goes into his Mega Scizor. Now here, I don't think he's going to Bullet Punch. Doesn't make much sense for him to Bullet Punch, so I'm just going to click Taunt in case he wants to U-turn or Defog on this turn, and he does opt to go for a U-turn, which is perfectly fine with me. The rocks are on the field. He only has 2 potential Defoggers in the Mince and the Scizor, so as long as I keep those 2 taunted at all times, then I won't have to worry about the rocks leaving the field at any point in time, which is pretty nice. Now here, expect him to go for probably a Thunderbolt, maybe a U-turn, but more likely a Thunderbolt. I go into my Superior, and now I'm going to fire off a pretty free Leaf Storm, as even if he wants to stay in and click Brave Bird and do it with the Copa Berry, I would be able to survive it no matter what. So he does actually go into the Celebi, as now I'm going to taunt just in case he wants to go for Stealth Rocks of his own, as I unfortunately missed the Leaf Storm. Not the biggest deal in the world, it would have done about 15 to it anyway, so not a huge deal as I taunt him as he tries to go for a Leech Seed. Now here I'm going to pull the double into my Mega Houndoom, as I feel like overall it's pretty safe. There's no way that he can really take advantage of that. I don't think he's going to necessarily go for an Earth Power on that turn if he has it. Even if he does, I can chew it up and I can threaten him out immediately. As here I can go straight into my Swampert on the Darmanitan, pretty much for free, just to ensure it only gets really one more switch into Rocks before it's going to die to my Rocky Helmet. So that's pretty cool, as now I'm going to double back into my Houndoom, knowing that is probably definitely choice locked into Flare Blitz, and I do have the Flash Fire ability, so it's a pretty safe double on my end, and I can taunt the Salamence here just in case he wants to go for a Defog or a Dragon Dance. Now here, expecting him to either go for Earthquake or go for Dragon Claw, I go into my Terrakion because I am actually bulky enough to most likely take an Earthquake from that range, I thought. It looks like he might be adamant though, so maybe not in that case. But even so, I'm able to fire off a Stone Edge as he switches into his Mega Scizor, going to taunt this again, kind of sacrificing my Terrakion, but it keeps the Mega Scizor low. It also keeps the Stealth Rock on the field, as despite the fact that I'm down in score right now, I really feel like I'm up in the battle as long as I can deal with this Nidoking. I'm going to go into my Jirachi, knowing that even if he's Choice Scarfed, I'll be able to take any one hit, and if he does decide to lock himself into Earth Power, I still have both the Superior and the Crobat that can check it pretty effectively, as he actually reveals to be a pretty cool Salac Berry set on the Nidoking, but I'm able to pull a pretty aggressive double into my Crobat, not really expecting him to get super aggressive and go for an Ice Beam on that turn, as Jirachi was pretty weakened. There was a decent chance I would just sack it there, so I really thought he would go for Earth Power on that turn. That did work out, as now I'm going to be able to go back into a Mega Houndoom as he goes into his Darmanitan, so that works out, as he's going to Flare Blitz here on my incoming Swampert, and down goes the Darm. So we're in a really good spot suddenly, as now he goes into his Mega Scizor. I know my Jirachi is most likely out of range of his Bullet Punch, so I am going to double straight into that, just in case he goes for a Roost or a Defog on this turn, as my Hidden Power Fire would still be able to threaten him out and keep him low, which was the general idea of that play. Now here I can just go for Hidden Power Fire for free, no reason not to. He goes into Mince. I'm still expecting this to be a little bit slower, probably adamant based upon that Dragon Claw damage. I'm going to be able to fire off an Icy Wind, knowing that I definitely outspeed this and can take him straight out. So that's pretty cool as he goes into his Tapu Koko. I'm going to make a very aggressive play into my Swampert as he clicks Thunderbolt. Now here is a play that's pretty interesting. So, alright. I could make a play here on this next turn. As we all know, this Tapu Koko has Grass Knot. It's not choice locked. We know it has Grass Knot 120%. Okay, so I could stay in and sack the Swampert that I really don't need for anything anymore. I could also try to make this really stupid aggressive play into my Crobat. That would mean that if I come in on a Grass Knot, I pretty much just win the game, because I keep my Swampert, I still have that one sack remaining, and I can just go for any attack with my Crobat on the top of Koko. Eventually I'll get my Houndoom back in, and I'll have so many sacks left over that there's no way I can lose the game as long as Tapu Koko, or as long as my Mega Houndoom's at full health. So it's a very aggressive play to try to switch harder to the Crobat here, and he very well could just click Thunderbolt again. And if he does, then I would be in a very bad spot, honestly, because I really needed the Crobat to offensively check the Tapu Koko. But despite the fact that it's kind of a bad, really an awful play to go harder than my Crobat here on the Tapu Koko at this stage in the game, we're going to do it anyways. And, you know what? It worked out, so it's okay. We're able to go ahead and go into the Crobat and fire off a Cross Poison, revealing that we do have an option to OHKO this Tapu Koko, and now it's essentially GG, as my Mega Houndoom is in a very good position to be able to clean this game up, as both the remaining Pokemon are weak to fire. So, pretty good here, as we're going to go into the Jirachi just to sack it off. Just prevents him from getting out of hand with SDs and whatnot, and allows me to go straight into my Mega Houndoom, fire off the Fire Blast, as now he's going to go into a Celebi. I can just taunt that, as the best he can do is Earth Power me, and if he is taunted, then I guaranteed survive one Earth Power, fire off a Dark Pulse on that next turn as he takes me out with Earth Power, and then I can kill him off with the Crobat, guaranteed. So we're going to win this game 4-0. Very, very good win for us. We needed that win to put us back not only at 500, but also above neutral in differential. I believe after this game we are now +2 differential, which is not bad. It's not amazing, but for the NPL, it's not too bad. There's a lot of teams who are still 2-0. There's very few teams that have only lost one game. So we're still in a good position here in terms of potentially pushing for playoffs at the end. We've got Gypsy in our conference. He's going to be tough to beat, or tough to catch up to even in the playoff race, but the other 3 guys, I think we can catch up to them. Next week we have a game against the Verd, who is actually 1 game ahead of us, and that will be one that is pretty much huge, honestly, in terms of playoffs at the end of the season. Is if I can win that game, I'll move up to 3-2. He'll move down to 3-2. We would be essentially tied in terms of everything except differential. We don't know what differential is going to be yet, obviously, but yeah, so that's a really big game here coming up. But fortunately, we were able to pull off the win against Abe in a very, very good game. So good game to Abe, of course. Played pretty well. I think prep might have been a little lacking, but I think I don't know if it's prep or just, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say that. I'm not really sure what went wrong on his end really in this game. I think there might have been some plays he could have made a little bit differently to maybe not get worn down by rocks as quickly. But I don't know what all of his sets were either, so it's hard to really know, hard to really critique. But definitely encourage you to go check out his side of the battle just to see what he has to say, why he made the plays that he did. But that's all I gotta say. So thanks for watching, guys. Toronto Staraptors have advanced to 2-2. Moving on to week 5 against the Verd. Looking forward to that one for sure, and I hope you guys are too. So have a good one, guys. Peace.